Potter.
Scottie B going to work in the paint.
Eastern Conference Final. New NBA champion. And it's a team from Toronto, Canada. We, the North, are now we, the champions.
What is going on, Raptors Nation? It is Luca here back with the Raptors Nation podcast on November the 7th. Hope you're all doing well. The Raptors are coming off a loss against the Sacramento Kings. They played well enough to win that game through the first three quarters, but then the team completely fell apart in the fourth. They got some more injuries, which isn't good news, as injuries have been a main storyline of this Raptors season thus far. As the Raptors are 2-7, they'll be taking on the Clippers on Saturday. They're going to have a couple days off, so in this one, we're going to be trying to keep it, relatively lighthearted, as we're going to be looking at Gradey Dick. I mean, he has been a really big bright spot for this Raptors team despite their early season struggles. But then we're going to turn it back a bit and look at Scottie Barnes' disrespectful ranking in the latest redraft. And then finally, we're going to be taking a look at some potential trade destinations for a certain Raptors player who could be a big name on the trade market as we get closer to the trade deadline. Before we get right into it, guys, do me a solid, drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. You can find this podcast on Apple iTunes or Spotify. So definitely leave us a 5-star review over there. And yeah, make sure you are subbed up here. All Raptors content can be found over here at the Raptors Nation YouTube channel. All right, so as I mentioned, it's been a rocky season for the Raptors thus far, but somebody who's really stepped up and made the most out of all of these injuries has been Gradey Dick. Gradey Dick, he is coming off a stinker against the Kings. We're not going to get into that. I mean, it happens. You're not going to bat 1,000. Gradey Dick, he didn't play well against Sacramento. It was his worst game of the season. But nonetheless, Gradey Dick, he is still playing well. And even when you factor in that stinker against Sacramento, you look at Dick's stats, guys, 20 points, 2.2 assists, 1.2 steals, 24% usage, and he's got a 58.4% true shooting percentage and 31.5 minutes of action per game. And this is compared to his stat lines last season, where Dick for 2023-2024 was averaging 8.5 points, 1.1 assists, 0.6 steals, was averaging only 21.1 minutes per game, and his usage was 16.7%, and his true shooting was 54.6%. So Gradey Dick, I mean, we're seeing him really take the NBA by storm. A lot of people impressed with what he's been able to do. He's been shooting it 46.1% from the field, 35.4% from three. That can even improve still, as obviously Gradey Dick was a known sharpshooter coming out of college for that ability to knock down the three-point shot. But it's been the other things Gradey Dick has shown that has really stood out to people. And Gradey Dick, I mean, everybody thought that Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett were going to be the prime candidates if you had to pinpoint a Raptor or two who was going to maybe make things interesting when talking about the most improved player of the year award. But it's Gradey Dick. Gradey Dick, I mean, his odds have gotten up drastically with his early season success. I mean, he looks like a most improved player of the year candidate with how he's been able to play. And what's really been impressive with Gradey Dick is he's doing all of this while defenses are focused on him, are preparing for him, because the Raptors' main guys, they're out. I mean, RJ Barrett's back, but Emmanuel Quickley and Barnes, they're out. So teams know, okay, Gradey Dick's going to be a focal point of the Raptors' offense. We got to try to slow this guy down. So it's not like Dick's been feasting on open looks and, he's been just left alone and not being paid attention to because there's other guys on this team who can cause damage. No, teams, they are going into these games knowing, okay, Gradey Dick, we got to keep an eye for this guy. And he's still doing damage. He's still playing well. And, he's been able to just shoot it very efficiently, with virtually no space to operate. And he's really working well in those tight margins. And, he's been able to finish inside, put pressure on the defense, draw fouls, get to the foul line, putting the ball on the deck, moving very well without the ball. And again, his improvement finishing at the rim has just been stellar. Like, these are parts of Gradey Dick's game that we didn't think we were going to see at this level. So Gradey, he has been able to really operate well and score efficiently while all this focus and attention has been on him. So what do you think is going to happen when Quickly comes back, Barnes comes back, and all of a sudden Gradey Dick's going to be the fourth offensive scoring option on this Raptors team in this Raptors starting lineup? Well, he's going to feast even more. He's really going to cause more damage if he's doing this against, sharp opposing defense out of the gate. So Gradey Dick has been playing really well. And, even when you include that game against Sacramento, his true shooting percentage would still rank 12th among 50 sophomores since 1982-83, who averaged 20 points over the first 9 games of a season. And that would be ahead of the likes of Zion Williamson and Karl Anthony Towns. So he's in impressive company. And then this is another stat that stood out to me. Only Stephen Curry is using more possessions per game coming off screens than Gradey Dick, and only 3 players have been more efficient off screens, according to NBA.com. So Gradey Dick, this is a guy who continues to fill into his body. He's 6'6". He's not getting bullied out there. He's been strong going to the basket, and he's been able to put it all together. And we all thought, coming into the season, or we questioned, can Gradey Dick be a solid rotation player? And he's, passed that test with flying colors. Then the next step was, can Gradey Dick be a serviceable long-term starter for this team? And so far, he's passing that with flying colors. And now we've entered the territory of, is Gradey Dick a budding star? And can he be a star for this Raptors team? And he has shown it. I know it's just a 2-week sample size. And, this can come down to, is this just a fluky run? Is he just getting hot? Is he just benefiting because guys are out? But you still got to take notice of what Dick has done these last 2 weeks, because it does look like he has the makings of being something special for this team. And while we always viewed him as just a rotation piece, maybe starter, he's looking to be so much more than that. So hopefully he continues this. Hopefully it's not just a flash in the pan. Hopefully his production can remain when Barnes and Quickly comes back and this Raptors team is fully healthy. But, Gradey, you cannot ignore what he's done. This was a guy who's going to have an increased workload. He had the starting job on his plate coming into his season, sophomore year, a lot of, pressure, expectations for him to deliver. And he has aced it thus far. Like, his only bad game was against Sacramento. Other than that, Gradey Dick has been on the ball. The way he's been able to move, his efficiency, his 3-point shot can be better, but obviously been able to knock down those shots. He's a big body. He can rebound. He's shown some playmaking. He's really bridged that gap, I feel, defensively. He's played better defense as of late. So Gradey Dick's just putting it all together. And, for a Raptors fan, it's been great to see, because there were a lot of question marks surrounding Gradey Dick. And me personally, I wasn't sold on him just yet. But, out of the gate here, through the team's first 9 games, he's winning a lot of people over, and, myself included. I've really liked what I've seen from Gradey. Again, you want to see it continue, but you have to be pleased with what he's shown us so far. So Gradey Dick, that's big for this Raptors team. Obviously, they're in a rebuild. They're going to need a hit on draft picks. And considering Grady's production, how he's looked, this team, they're going to need these draft picks to develop into A-plus players. And, right now, Gradey Dick, he does look like he's going to be a big focal point of this rebuild moving forward. And he is a part of this young core for many years to come. So, yeah, what have your thoughts been about Gradey, and what has really stood out to you the most about, Dick's production as of late with this Raptors team? Again, making the most out of the opportunities. He started every game, and he and RJ in particular, they have really helped the Raptors sustain these injuries. I know the record is ugly, but the Raptors could have easily won a bunch of these games. Besides the Sacramento game, which they had a chance to win going to the fourth quarter, you could make a case that the Raptors could win every other one of those games, except, obviously the Cavaliers opening night and then the Minnesota game. But, as of late, the last week, RJ and Gradey, they have kept this Raptors team afloat and fighting and competitive, despite them being severely shorthanded. So, gotta love what you're seeing from Gradey thus far. But we're going to switch gears now. We're going to move from Gradey Dick to the Raptors franchise player, Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes, he won't need surgery, which is good news for his orbital fracture. We're going to get another update, I believe, in 2 weeks. So it's looking good for Barnes because he doesn't need surgery. It means that he's going to be able to ramp up and return to the court sooner rather than later. So hopefully we see Barnes, I want to say in the middle of November. That might be a little bit, optimistic, but I don't think Barnes is going to miss that much time. Initially, I thought it was going to be way more time because we didn't know what the status of the injury was. But yeah, Barnes, he should be back, I would say, within the next month. And, that's obviously great. He was playing well, finding himself, and then he suffered that inadvertent elbow from Jokic. He was in visible pain, had to be helped to the Raptors bench, has missed the Raptors last couple of games. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about something that occurred off the court, and that is a Bill Simmons 2021 NBA redraft ranking list. So Bill Simmons, on the latest edition of the Bill Simmons podcast, he put out a segment. He put out his redraft of the 2021 NBA draft class, which is looking really good in hindsight, a couple years later. And his ranking was as follows. He has, in a redraft, he has Evan Mobley number 1, Cade Cunningham number 2. Okay, that's fair. Jalen Suggs number 3, Jalen Johnson number 4, Alfred Sengun number 5, and Scottie Barnes number 6. How on earth is Scottie Barnes ranked below all of those other players? He's the only player out of this list that got such a contract that he just did. Only player that has made the All-Star team. And he was putting up big numbers before he got injured. So maybe Scottie Barnes being out for the last couple of games and out of sight, out of mind factored into this ranking. But I don't know what the hell Bill Simmons was, factoring in here. But how do you have Barnes 6th? Like, how is he behind Sengun, Jalen Johnson, and Jalen Suggs respectively? How does that happen? Like, if you want to have Mobley ahead of Barnes, I'm not going to be super biased here. I'm not going to be, harping and going crazy. Oh, Scottie Barnes, he's the best player in the NBA. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. If you want to have Evan Mobley ahead of Scottie Barnes, I can see that case. Evan Mobley's been playing really well this season, and I really think he's going to turn into something special. He's probably going to win Most Improved Player of the Year. Cade Cunningham, I can live with that too. I think Cade is a phenomenal player. But again, you can still make a case Barnes being over those players. But my point being, if you have Mobley and Cade over Barnes, I can live with that. But where it gets disrespectful and just flat out insane is that you have Jalen Johnson, Suggs, and Sengun ahead of Barnes. Like, Suggs is a good player, but he's a role player. And then, Jalen Johnson, we still got to see more from him. Sengun should be above Suggs and Jalen Johnson, just below Barnes. But how is Barnes outside of the top 5 completely? Like, that is insane. So, you can live with the Mobley and Cade, but Scottie Barnes definitely deserves to be in this top 3. And how would I have it is, okay, Mobley number 1, you probably can live with that. Like I said, Barnes definitely has to be number 2. But again, Barnes, just based on what he's accomplished and, what he's been able to do versus a Mobley. I know Mobley, you're kind of maybe projecting it on long-term outlook, but you still got to put Barnes number 1. So, that would be the ranking of most Raptors fans, but at least number 3. He's got to be number 2 or number 3 on this redraft if you want to be more, critical and you don't want to, give Scottie the easy pass. But to be number 6 on this list, that's just like doing Scottie a huge disservice. And you know what, Bill Simmons, it's not like it's surprising, but then you look into Bill Simmons and kind of what he said about Scottie Barnes in the past, you do some digging, it's maybe not as surprising because Simmons has been known for being vocal and criticizing Barnes. He did say that Barnes wasn't deserving of that max contract from the Raptors this past summer, that the Raptors maybe should have tried to negotiate more with Barnes before handing him such a deal. So it doesn't seem like Bill Simmons is the biggest Scottie Barnes fan. But to have him outside of the top 5 and below guys like Suggs and Jalen Johnson and Sengun, that's insane. Like how Barnes is not in the top 3 of this list at the very least, like it just boggles my mind. So yeah, very, very critical. And Scottie, he's gonna have to just come back onto the court and remind people just how good he is and just how good he can be. Because when you look at the top of that draft class, very talented, but Scottie's definitely amongst the best to come out of that draft class. And if you do a redraft, many people are taking Scottie Barnes in the top 3, arguably number 1. And that would be justified if you did, just given his track record when compared to some of these other guys to this point. We're not talking about, again, future stuff and how they project. To this point, I mean, number 6, yeah, that's just flat out. That's disrespectful. Number 6 is just, you're not watching Scottie Barnes play. You're not watching his game. You're not watching his impact. You're just disregarding him completely. That's what that tells me. So, yeah, that was bad. That was a bad ranking. And of course, the American media always critical of the Raptors. We've known that. It's a battle that's been going on for ages. But yeah, definitely going to stir the pot. You know what? Bill Simmons does that. Maybe he knows the Raptors got such a big following, such a strong fan base. There's a lot of clips that have come out from Simmons and Ringer, the Ringer over the years that, target the Raptors in particular. I think there was another segment where they basically ripped on the Raptors for committing to this core of Barnes, Quickly, and Barrett, and it got a ton of traction. So you got to think maybe it's more of that, stirring up a fan base to drive traction to their stuff. But if they actually believe in some of these takes, man, the Raptors are still fighting that battle of trying to gain some respect around here. So what do you think of the ranking? I think a lot of people would agree with me, just completely out of touch. And where would you rank Barnes in a redraft? Again, arguably can be number 1. I can live with number 3. I would probably have him 1 or 2 if I had to do my redraft. I'm very high on Mobley and Cade, as you guys can tell. Probably more higher on Mobley, I would say, but Barnes is definitely in that conversation and perhaps ahead of those guys in this point in time. So, yeah. All right, guys, we are going to switch gears and finish up the show by talking about Jakob Poeltl. Now, why are we talking about Jakob Poeltl trade destinations on November 7th? I mean, Luca has been playing very, very well, and without Jakob Poeltl, the Raptors would be a complete disaster. They probably would have 1 win without Poeltl. He has been actually playing some of his best basketball, minus the Sacramento game. Before that, he was having a tremendous stretch. Well, that's the point. If the Raptors continue to falter, they continue to lose, they continue to just flat out bottom out, and we get closer to the trade deadline, and the Raptors realistically have a chance of getting a bottom 5 pick, because right now it looks pretty likely they're going to be a part of that equation. It looks likely they're going to be in the running for Cooper Flag, because I don't think the Bucks and 76ers, who, funny enough, are the only two teams below the Raptors in the Eastern Conference standings. Right now, it's Raptors 13, Sixers or Bucks 14, and then Bucks, Sixers 15. I forgot the order, but it's basically Raptors 13, and then those 2 teams below them. So that's crazy. And then on the other side, the Utah Jazz flat out stink. They only have 1 win. So the Raptors at 2 wins, if they continue this type of losing, which I don't know if they will when guys come back, but let's just say they do because their schedule's not letting up, they could be in the running seriously for Cooper Flag, because I don't think the Bucks and Sixers are going to stay that low for too long. So then the conversation becomes, okay, if these losses continue to pile up, you're in a really good position to secure a top 5 pick, maybe even a top 3. There I say it, the number 1 pick in the draft, Cooper Flag, who is the prize of this upcoming draft. How do you get even worse? How do you ensure that you lose even more games in the second half of the season when your schedule is going to get a little bit more lenient? Well, you trade away a player who has directly impact winning. You trade away a player who, without this team, has looked way worse, and that is Jakob Poeltl. We know how a healthy Jakob Poeltl inserted in the starting lineup makes the Raptors competitive. We've seen it the last couple of games. We saw it going back to last season, and we saw the effect of Poeltl being out and the Raptors completely falling off the rails. So you trade a really good player who's been a key of you remaining competitive if you want to completely tear this thing up, bottom out, and try to get a top prize to add to this nucleus of good young players in Toronto. So that's the rationale behind this. I'm not saying Jakob Poeltl is a bad player. And if the Raptors weren't competing, if they were in contention, you want to keep Jakob Poeltl for how well he's playing. But that's not the goal. You would have to think at 2-7, it's all about the future. It's not about the season. It never was. It's about the rebuild. And to get worse, you got to trade a pillar. And Jakob Poeltl, number 1, he makes your team better. So trading him, it makes your team worse. You accomplish that. And then the other thing, too, is he's going to have a lot of suitors, you would think, from contending teams who need a big. And that's what we're going to get into right now. So what are some potential trade destinations for Jakob Poeltl? So the first team that comes to mind, the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans right now, they have gotten out of the gate rough. They're dealing with a bunch of injuries, but I don't see the Pelicans surrendering and saying, okay, we're going to tank. We're going to try for a top pick because they made a win now move bringing in DeJounte Murray. I think the Pelicans are just trying to survive, and then when guys come back, they're going to be pushy. So I could see them being aggressive at the deadline, trying to add a piece, particularly a center, because right now, you look at their center depth, it's thin. Yves Missy's a rookie. Daniel Tice isn't a starter. He shouldn't be. So adding a Jakob Poeltl, that would go a long way in helping the Pelicans kind of get a final puzzle piece. And then the other interesting part about this is, Brandon Ingram's name has come up a ton in trade rumors. And, the Pelicans are probably going to have to figure out a trade because he's a unrestricted free agent. And maybe the fit's not as ideal. When you got up and coming guys like Herb Jones and, Trey Murphy III, who are seemed as Brandon Ingram's replacement. So there is an interesting deal maybe around Brandon Ingram. But again, he is a UFA this summer. I don't know what the Raptors' rationale would be behind that if you're just going to trade for him and then you lose him, because I like Brandon Ingram. I don't really see him as a rebuild piece. That's a guy who can, take a contending team to the next level. So I don't know how much sense that makes. He is 27. But maybe there's something there, and maybe the Pelicans can come up with an offer. They do have some interesting puzzle pieces, and they do look at a guy like Jakob Poeltl, as Poeltl would make a lot of sense for them. Another potential trade destination for Jakob Poeltl is the New York Knicks. So the Knicks are another team that's trying to figure it out. They've kind of come out with a slow start to the season, and, they are lacking size. Obviously, losing Hardenstein, Mitchell Robinson is injured. You do have Karl Anthony Towns, but Cat, I think, is better suited when you slide him next to a more traditional center, as we saw in Minnesota. So if the Knicks do want to do that and elect to try to get a center, be in the market for the center where they can slide Cat to the 4, and then you can have a Josh Hart come from off the bench, which would help the Knicks depth, because right now, I think the Knicks need a bit more balance. They're definitely hurting not having a guy in DiVincenzo come from off the bench and turn the game upside down as he did last season for them. Maybe they go after Jakob Poeltl. We know the Raptors and Knicks are notorious for making deals with each other. And if you're the Raptors, you want to make another deal with the Knicks because you have had a good track record with making deals with the Knicks. And that's something that would make sense. I think the Knicks are going to be in the market for a center, and Jakob Poeltl would be a nice fit over there. He would be perhaps the final puzzle piece to the Knicks as they hope to be a championship contender and obviously, dethrone Boston getting out of the East. So that's another potential deal that makes sense. And maybe that could be centered around a Mitchell Robinson, who it seems like the Knicks are over and done with, as he's been hampered with injuries. And there were a ton of rumors that New York maybe wants to part ways with him. So that's something that can maybe happen. And then the final trade destination, this to me makes the most sense. The Los Angeles Lakers. Lakers Nation, listen up, because I think what the Lakers need is a center. And there's been a ton of rumors that the Lakers are looking for a center, and reports have linked the Lakers to Walker Kessler. The Jazz are probably going to trade him as they look to get even worse to try to secure and capture the flag and Cooper Flag. But we know Danny Ainge, he's notorious of being patient when it comes to deals. And for him to make a deal, he's going to want a lot out of you. So maybe the Lakers look elsewhere in terms of filling that center position. I know Koloko came back. Great to see him contribute and come back, but I think the Lakers need another piece at that center position, and they would like to have Anthony Davis go, to the 4, play at the 4, and be next to a center, because that's when the Lakers were at their most deadly. When they won the championship in the bubble, they had Dwight Howard, so they need a true center, and I think that's what this team needs if they want to be a contender and they want to compete in the West. So Jakob Poeltl, that's a name that could be of interest to the Lakers. And, a deal centered around Jared Vanderbilt, who's making $10 million, that's maybe something that could be looked at. But I think the Lakers would look at Poeltl as a realistic trade target. And again, from the Raptors' perspective, you're offloading Poeltl because you want to go younger at center eventually. You got Ulrich Chomsky is the project, but I still think this team needs, a developmental center, like a true developmental center that can be a long-term starter of this team. And you're trying to get worse than you already are because you want to rack up more losses and you want to secure a top 5, top 3, perhaps, best case scenario, the number 1 pick in the 2025 NBA draft, which would just be absolutely insane to get. But yeah, that's what the rationale would be behind this. And obviously, Poeltl is going to be a big name if things continue to fall apart for the Raptors to be on the move. Chris Boucher, who's kind of, raising his trade stock, which is good for the Raptors. Boucher had a big game in Sacramento. That's another guy who can, be a nice backup big for a lot of contending teams. And then the last one here is Bruce Brown. But we got to get Bruce Brown back on the court to kind of restore some of that lost value. And hopefully, he can come back soon and prove that he's still a good role player. He's still a good bench piece, perhaps the missing bench piece on a championship team. So those are the 3 names that, could come to mind if the Raptors are going to be heavy sellers at the deadline, which in theory they should, and continue to offload players, continue to offload these veterans, try to get, some future assets back via draft picks and stuff like that. And then obviously, be bad enough where you can lose more games and put yourself in a position to get a really good pick in this upcoming draft. So yeah, these are just some trade destinations I put together. Let me know your thoughts. Do you want to see the Raptors part ways with Jakob Poeltl? Do you think that's the play right here, guys? I mean, let's be realistic. The Raptors are, 2-7. It's not going to get any easier. Yeah, they can get pieces back. They've looked very competitive. Don't get me wrong. They've been a very fun team. This record could look a lot different, as I said, towards the beginning of the show. But realistically, it's not really about the season. It's about the future. And if you want to put yourself in a prime position, a lot of arrows point to, okay, the Raptors should, try to bottom out, get a nice pick, and then they're really going to be cooking if you add a potential star to this young core that they have already. So yeah, the Raptors could be major players at the trade deadline once again. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. You can follow me on X at Luca Rosano 3. You can check out all of our work over at RaptorsNation.com. We're bringing you up-to-the-minute Raptors news on our site. So definitely go show the site some love. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay safe.